All right, the orange pill is here for you, and I am with Christine Lagarde.
Oui,
Madame
c'est
Lagarde.
moi, Christine Lagarde. Je suis chef SCP.
Right, you know, the Christine Lagarde way of living is coming to the rest of the world. We're going to get the high taxes here in America.
Oui, le taxe, c'est beau. C'est beau pour les taxes, c'est beau. C'est beau parce que j'ai besoin de croissants, des clubs de boîte 2+2, moi et Dominique Strauss-Kahn, oui.
Yuck, yuck, yuck. Dominic Strauss-Kahn. Con. OG is a state of mind. That's a theme for this episode because we are about to deliver to you a very nice long interview with Adam Back. Yes, Adam Back, who invented Hashcash, which is in the Bitcoin mining algorithm. He is in the Bitcoin white paper as well. And he tweeted something this past week. He actually does refer to it in the interview, which I thought you would love. Bitcoin OG is a state of mind, not an oldest coin, date first bought. It's more the cypherpunk attitude, getting why we Bitcoin becomes a way of life, a mission. Yes, you too could end up looking like this.
Oui, Adam Back, il est mignon. C'est très chouette. C'est beau, intelligent, très intelligent. Jeune homme qui fait de hashcash dans la papier blanche. Satoshi a dit à Adam Back, merci Adam Back pour le hashcash. Et voilà.
Speak English, Madame Lagarde. I know you speak English
Oui,
because you went to University of Chicago.
Okay, I speak English. I am not so good at the English, but Adam Back is in the white paper, and he is a friend of Satoshi.
We're all friends of Satoshi. You know what? That quote from Adam Back made me think of something Marilyn Monroe said. She said, Marilyn Monroe said, it's better to be late than to arrive ugly. And that makes me think of a lot of so-called OGs who were there early into Bitcoin, but they arrived ugly, filled with envy, filled with hubris, filled with fear, filled with greed, filled with all the ugly stuff that basically made them weak people. So we all know the names. We don't need to drop them here. We know the people who arrived ugly into the Bitcoin space, and that Bitcoin derangement syndrome made them uglier. It revealed their ugly to all the world to see.
Bitcoin is un miroir.
Speak. Send Max Kaiser to speak.
Oui. Qui est Max Kaiser?
Send Max Kaiser.
Max Oui, okay. Voilà, je suis là.
So what do you have to say about that? That, those filled with hubris, envy, pride, insecurity, all their ugly, it was shown. And it would have been better had they arrived late and they understood the game. So, I mean, look at Michael Saylor. He's a good example. Look at all the ugly stuff he dropped back in 2013 about Bitcoin. And now he arrives late, but looking like Marilyn Monroe with her skirt flying up.
Yes, well, everything starts in the dirt and it grows from the dirt. And same thing with Bitcoin. The seed of the protocol landed in the mud and the dirt and the poop. And amongst the trolls and the villains and the non-contents and the malcontents and the socially awkward. And it grew from the fertilization, from that muck, from the manure of the underclass, from the fappers and the incels, and it grew, and as it grew, it gained purpose and strength, and it gained followers, and it went to the sun, and it went toward the sunlight, and now it's in a place much different. I agree with Marilyn Monroe. that sometimes, it's better to have a fish in the pond than 5 sticks on a row.
It's better to be late than to arrive ugly. That's my motto, basically.
Wait. It's incroyable. Your motto, of course, is in keeping with the times, and it's only getting more glorious and more beautiful. That's the thing about Bitcoin. It is the aesthetics of finest aesthetic instincts distilled into a perfume of greatness that we bathe in, and we synthesize with that who is the ultimate perfection, and it's happening in real time, and block by block by block, every block we get closer. It says on my block clock, hello, because
hello.
Let me explain that the reason why this always says hello is because we're in the cosmic now. Actually, we're beyond blocks. Blocks, who cares if it's block 600,000, 800,000? We're in the cosmic now. It's just hello, 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 hello. Like Johnny Rotten when he was at Public Image Limited. That song where it goes, hello, hello, hello. Public Image Limit. We're in the public image.
Oh my God.
Hello.
Speaking of ugly, Biden took a giant turd onto the market onto many Americans when he is like basically the top rate of capital gains tax he's envisioning as being 43.6%. And then I think it's like another 12% or 13% if you live in California or New York. But that would be the top rate of capital gains tax for people earning over $1 million. And there were some rumors or some sort of gossip being posted on Zero Hedge's Twitter as well that crypto capital gains would be 80%. I'm not sure that's probably
right. Well, we've said on the show, right, that taxes are the mechanism for these plutocrats to claw back a lot of money that they feel they're entitled to. So that's why we've said to stay agile.
Yeah.
And buying real estate is a bit of a problem because you can't put it in your pocket and go to a country that's more receptive to you as a crypto person, as a Bitcoin person. And so that's number one. Number two, remember, if the government says something that's abhorrent to those with some, wealth, we will simply crash the market until they reverse course. Same thing happened with Hillary Clinton during the 1980s. She suggested healthcare for all, and Wall Street crashed the bond market right in her face, and she retracted those statements. And Bill said when he comes back, he wants to come back as the bond market because that's where all the power is, okay? So now if Biden wants to say ugly things, then he's going to have to reap the whirlwind of a crashing stock market until he stops saying ugly things, until he retracts those ugly things. And then we can go back to free market capitalism. So he may have to learn the lesson that Hillary had to learn. Hopefully he doesn't end up, like Hillary, a deranged serial killer, psychopath, murdering people in their jail cells, and he has a better life, than that.
Well, of course, just hodl, right? And wait until they find out that, in fact, they don't understand, as Adam Beck says, the OG state of mind. The OG state of mind is hodl. We're hodling. And if they think they're going to get any capital gains out of us,
wrong.
I want to fling my skirt up at them, right? That's
do it.
That's my Marilyn Monroe move.
Yeah, let's get those skirts flying in the air.
I think Pablo Picasso, of course, God, that guy's art sells for quite a lot. You've got a lot of capital gains if you're selling or reselling some Pablo Picassos. You retweeted this Uber fact, and it kind of is in the spirit of this whole OG state of mind.
Yeah.
Talk about OG state of mind.
Yeah.
Pablo Picasso kept a gun loaded with blanks, which he used to shoot at people who questioned the meaning of his paintings.
Right. So this is toxic crypto Twitter. Toxic Bitcoin Twitter, right?
Their tongues are loaded with blanks.
It's loaded gun with blanks. And when somebody says questions and says stupid things about Bitcoin, like it's going to boil the oceans or blah, 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 you shoot them in the face with your blanks, bang, bang, bang. Just get out of my studio. Go back to the crawl you crawled out from, the hole you crawled out from. Shut up. You're a moron. Right? Bitcoin is Picasso. You're not. So go doodle on a napkin somewhere and call it an NFT and stuff it up your asshole and regurgitate it through your mouth and spew it out like you're saying something other than regurgitated diarrhea, because you're not. You're a fucking idiot. So shut the fuck up.
Right. With that, I think it's a perfect moment to turn to our guest, Adam Back, because only Adam Back could follow that soliloquy from Max.
We Adam Back! Il est génial! Oui, allez! All righty, time to speak with Adam Back, cypherpunk, cryptographer, inventor of Hashcash, which is used in Bitcoin mining, and the co-founder of and CEO of Blockstream. Dr. Back, welcome back.
Yeah, good to be on Orange Pill.
Right. So, the last time we had you here was not too long after the halving. And this is the big question, because was the halving priced in or was it not? Because obviously the price went from about 12,000 when we last spoke to you to over 50,000. So are we pricing in the next halving, or is this the halving that was not priced in?
I think the halving wasn't priced in, but there's a straightforward market reason for that, which is the volatility. So, if you were, let's say, somebody that does buy-to-let housing, and the government announced a sudden change in taxation rates on buy-to-let housing that made it more favorable, and that was going to start in 6 months, take effect at the beginning of next tax year, people would be able to calculate that very steadily, because house prices are generally predictable, rent returns are predictable, you can do net present value, do calculations, whereas with Bitcoin, it's extremely volatile. So, people who are not Bitcoin exposed, who want to collect that premium, it's too much volatility for the adjustment. And the people who are exposed to Bitcoin are already, overexposed, so they can't do anymore. So I think that's how it doesn't get priced in.
Right. So similar to options pricing, which keys off beta. So on a really volatile underlying stock, the time premium is higher than a non-volatile stock. So you're saying that the volatility in Bitcoin acts as a bit of a dampening in terms of price, is how I hear it. I wanted to also ask you about something that was brought up during the recent Daniela Cambone debate between Michael Saylor and Frank Giustra. Frank was questioning the fact that, Michael quotes the compounded rate of return for Bitcoin going back to $1. He says, it's $196, 196% a year, but it shouldn't be looked at over that time period. But to add on to what you're saying there, during that time period, you had 3 halvings and you had 3 90% corrections. So I think it is fair to include the regression model back to 2011. And he also said that people weren't looking at it as an asset class back then, but I know we were on Kaiser Report. We certainly were calling it an asset class. Would you say that is also connected? Do you see that?
Well, I mean, it's I guess it's part of volatility, right? So you got, if you accept that starting point, you got 200% year-on-year return, but drawbacks as much as 85%. So that's at times really highly volatile. And I would typify Michael Saylor as a smart money early adopter, right? He was an early person buying Apple and enthusing about the potential of iPhones when nobody got it. And now he's on the Bitcoin thing. This is the next wave, and this is the clear winner. I'm going to buy it, right? So I think it's also early. So, when you hear these things that people are, people with a good degree of finance experience are just not getting it still in 2021, that doesn't mean it's a problem. It means we're still early, actually. We think it's, it's here, institutions are buying, but clearly it's still early.
Right. So, Michael Saylor had mentioned that the reason why he got in, one of the reasons is like the cyber hornets, the community of Bitcoin. And of course, post 2017 and the fork wars and the block size wars, there was a huge resolution to the whatever was driving the chaos and the conflict in the Bitcoin space between 2015, 16, and 17. But I want to ask you about Taproot now, because is there some sort of emerging conflict going on there? What is Taproot? Why does it exist? And will it be implemented? What's going on with Taproot?
Yeah, so it's implemented, and I mean, it looks likely that it will get activated, sometime in the next, I guess, maybe even this year or into next year. And what it is a more compact signature format that can sort of compress multi-sigs down to the size, in some cases, of a single sig. And the Taproot part is sort of anti-fingerprinting technology, so that you can't distinguish, a Lightning channel from a multi-sig wallet from a single sig wallet in a normal case. So it provides, removes some hooks from chain analysis and gives you more privacy because you can't distinguish wallet types. And so then the discussions that there are actually not about Taproot, but just about the, very technical details about the way that it could be activated. And so that's what people are debating. But generally, I think the Bitcoin core release has a proposal. A lot of people seem to like it. It's a way to try something, so-called Speedy Trial. So try a 3-month activation. If it runs into issues, then think again. So that, and then, assuming it does activate, and indications are that it will, because, something like 90% of pools have added support, kind of tracking page and so forth. Then there's a big, a delay between when it locks in that it's going to activate and when it actually activates, and that's the time frame for people to upgrade their full nodes on pools and things, and exchanges and things like that. So it's a pretty clever new variant activation idea, which I think the idea is it answers concerns of sort of a middle ground between two different technical activation mechanisms.
Right. Back in the earlier days, before Bitcoin Twitter, before all this, so many podcasts and speakers and thinkers in the space, like in those early days when, there was just ordinary non-technical people like ourselves and the Bitcoin core devs, when these fights would erupt into the public, and there was no intermediary trying to explain to the ordinary person what was happening in the Bitcoin core dev side of things. So at the moment, there's no sort of conflict. It's just around the edges about activation.
Yeah, I mean, the discussion is all about activation. Taproot, I think that's been completed for a while, gone through a lot of testing. Yeah.
Okay, so you use the phrase that has less privacy hooks for chain analysis. Right. What does that mean?
So today you've got, these tiny little smart contracts attached to each coin. And so if you're using like a Blockstream green wallet, it's got a particular type of multi-sig with a timeout. And so as soon as you look in the chain, they could, categorize them and say, well, this cluster over here, all these ones with this special type of script, those are all green address. And these ones over here, those are Lightning channel setups and so on. So you can do some open source analysis on the chain, and that might tell you something, because, if you're a green address user and you pay somebody who's another wallet that's single sig, you'd be able to tell that is not change because it's going to a single sig. So it would, a bit of fingerprinting or sort of things that could help you inductively guess helps you. So with Taproot, there's much less, everything's harmonized, everything looks the same, once it's all adopted, and it's a little smaller as well. So you should get a bit more scale out of it, I would say, smaller transactions on average.
So it increases under the broad heading of privacy. And would you also put it under the broad heading that it increases fungibility?
Yeah, I'd say that's a good way to look at it, because it reduces sort of the linkages which are the inputs that somebody would use to try to impair fungibility. So it deprives them of that information partly.
Right. I suppose let's follow up on that, because Max had mentioned in the pre-debate situation between Michael Saylor and Frank Giustra that was the one advantage that gold still had over Bitcoin, which is the fungibility, where you could melt it down and easily, hide who it originally came from. Are we at that point yet with Bitcoin, or will we soon be at that point?
So I think Bitcoin is, typically each major release of Bitcoin has some privacy improvements, at the network level or in the protocol level. So in this case, the Taproot is a pretty nice improvement. And then you've got layer 2 for Bitcoin. So layer 2 being, effectively a way to have modular opt-in new features built on top of Bitcoin. And so you have, Lightning with its onion routing, where you get a fair degree of privacy for small to medium-sized payments. And then Liquid, which has confidential transactions integrated. So that hides, so the sender and the receiver can see how many Bitcoins they've sent or how many tethers, but somebody outside of it can't tell, they can't see how much and what type. So that's good for traders, because you don't get the kind of whale calls, 10,000 Bitcoins deposited on Bitfinex. Oh no, what's happening, right? And so that kind of thing's gone. And there are other layer 2s, so Paul Stortz is working on a drive chain, which is another kind of side chain with the same technology as Zcash, but denominated in Bitcoin. So there's lots of potential for layer 2 to bring more privacy to Bitcoin.
Though I am a big fan of those whale calls, the whale alerts on Twitter. They make me laugh all the time. But speaking of whales, let's talk about sharks, shark tanks. Kevin O'Leary was recently quoted in the news that he says he doesn't ever want to buy any blood coin from China, and that he's only interested in buying clean coins. What is your take on this notion that you could buy virgin coins?
Well, I mean, you can buy coins that are, straight from a miner, potentially. And I hear that there used to be a small premium for that, but I think it's largely disappeared now. I mean, generally speaking, miners are by design anonymous, so you can't really tell who mined them. Sometimes people put strings in them to advertise, use our pool, we have this much hash rate, that kind of thing. But I'd say in general, Bitcoin seeks out the lowest cost power for economic reasons. And that tends to be green, because non-green power has, extraction, processing, refinement, and transport costs. Whereas, hydroelectricity and other forms of green power, you've just got the original capex cost and a low maintenance cost. So they tend to be cheaper. So certainly a lot of hydropower. And I would say that that's the area of expansion. There's an enormous amount of untapped hydropower and even tapped but unused hydropower in the world. I mean, Canada has a lot of tapped but unused hydropower.
Right. Well, this brings us to China, because that's part of that. His FUD is about China, and this notion that not only are they using a lot of coal-powered energy, but I want to ask you about what happened in China in the past week or two. There was some sort of power outage that knocked most of the miners offline in Inner Mongolia. Now, what did you see when you're looking at the hash rate and the response? Like, how much were you able to tell exactly how much of the hash rate that comes out of China? And what did you see? What did you notice in the story?
So I saw a bunch of stuff on Sunday where people were just super confused. Their data was wrong, their inferences were wrong, and their expectations of who was going to be economically hit by this was wrong. So if they were trading on it, they were not doing themselves a favor, let's say that. So firstly, they're assuming that the hash rate was 40% down, was actually closer to 20 to 25 at worst. And that is because they're looking at graphs that are extrapolated from the time between blocks. And that's already very variable. So if you look at very few samples of a very random variable, you'll be very inaccurate. And so if you look at 90%, 95%, most of the graphs online are plus or minus 30%. They're hugely inaccurate. So it will say the hash rate was 220 exahash Actually, if we look at the real data, it's never exceeded so far, like about 168. So they're massively overestimating. And so they looked at the normal random variance and they added that into the drop. And so this 40% was actually with 20. And the way that you tell what it is, I mean, two ways to tell what it really is. One way is to sample over a very long period of time, but that's tricky because it's also moving as people bring new equipment. But the other way is you look at pool share statistics. So when you're mining, you are sending thousands of tiny bits of work to a pool, and they're tracking it in real time is going to pay you your share of the payout. And they report that data. And so there are a couple of sites that show you that. And you can see, by the hour, exactly what the hash rate is. It's very high resolution. So I started posting that and saying, no, you guys got, there were actual publications and reports and things that were just, making conclusions from actually incorrect data. So I sent it to, a few people who wrote their reports. And then the other kind of amusing thing is that they were assuming that this would be bad for other miners. Obviously, if you're connected to the power station and it's down, you have a problem, and that's going to lose you money. But if you're mining somewhere else, you actually make more money. So people are assuming because the hash rate fell that you get less blocks. So the intuition is there are less blocks per day, but the difficulty is unchanged within a 2-week period. So as a separate miner, given your amount of hash rate, your expected blocks per week is completely unaffected. So your profit, your starting point is you're completely unaffected. Your profit margin is the same. However, there's less blocks and the fees went up. So you get paid more fees. So actually it's more profitable. And after a couple of weeks, presuming it lasts a little while, it doesn't look like it's come back yet. The difficulty will adjust downwards. So now you will actually perform less work for a block. So it will get even more profitable. So people that were trading on the worry that this is going to impact mining, miners going to lose money, I got it upside down, basically. Yeah, so that was the thing. And then of course there was the bigger thing was a big liquidation cascade of about $4.5 billion of highly over-leveraged degenerate traders in the Bitcoin space that triggered. Now, I don't know if that was, if this confusion about the hash rate situation was enough to start the liquidation cascade, or if that was just coincidental. I mean, it happened on a weekend, and weekends are very thinly traded typically, so it's much easier for something like that to get started.
Right. So people often say, when asked to describe Bitcoin, they'll say, well, it's Adam Back's Hashcash plus the difficulty adjustment. Is that an accurate statement?
Well, I mean, there's a bunch more things. I think looking at it from the perspective of somebody who was involved in the much earlier discussions in trying to design electronic cash systems. So, I proposed Hashcash, and almost immediately it occurred independently to many people that, wow, this is like digital gold. And then they set about thinking, oh no, it's going to inflate according to Moore's law. So how do we control the inflation? And there were a couple of loose ideas by Wei Dai with B-Money and Nick Szabo with BitGold that were about a year later. But they were kind of involved a bit too much market, human intelligence, and sort of groups deciding how many coins could be issued per period. So I think the difficulty adjustment, and they were already talking about, Nick Szabo was talking about Byzantine networks and broadcast, and so was Wei Dai and other people. So all of the other major general aspects of Bitcoin were considered, but the missing thing, so if you look at what's different about what Bitcoin achieved, I think that Satoshi made that key observation that you can't, the computers don't know the price, so they can't fix the price, but they can fix the supply curve and then just let the market figure out what the price should be. So people had the wrong target, which was a lot of people at least. So if you found a way to automate it so it's completely devoid of human, controls, policy, governance. Bitcoin has no governance, basically. It's just an automated system.
Right. And after this incident in China where hash rate was impacted, it did come down. You're saying it came down roughly 25%. So as of, I think, May 1st, we have the next difficulty adjustment. And that's how the system, one of the elegant aspects of the design of the system. So what will happen on May 1st?
Well, the hash rate will adapt. I mean, sorry, the difficulty will adapt. So at the moment, the blocks are more than 10 minutes apart because there's less hash rate working on them. So let's say, they come online over time. It works out to average 12-minute blocks over the period. So then the difficulty will adjust downwards 20% to kind of correct it back to 10-minute blocks. And then it will probably diverge in one direction or another. It moves up and down a little bit, just normally, right? So that will be back to normal. And I'd say then it's probably going to go up again in the next period because they're going to fix their power station and bring those miners back on, right?
Right. I've often wondered, Adam, about how the community over the past 10 years has changed. And in the last couple of years in particular, and when you hear people like Michael Saylor talk, there's a lot of philosophical discussion. There's a lot of almost quasi-religious discussion, positioning Bitcoin as metaphorically as a clock, and what that might mean historically. So the conversation has taken on almost mystical qualities. You are a technologist, programmer. You've invented Hashcash. It's referenced in the white paper. You're clearly a guy who writes code. What do you think about this aspect of the development of Bitcoin? Do you follow that side of things, or do you just focus on code?
So I mean, actually, I got involved in the cypherpunks list and in privacy technology in the 90s because it struck me as a very interesting way for, the individual to get more control and independence, sort of self-sovereignty. And so, I found that intersection between what you could build with technology and sort of bring a more independent, self-sovereign society together as fascinating. So it's basically been my mission, like, ever since. And so, I get it. Like, the technology is interesting, but to me, there's a mission at the end of it, which is I'm focusing on the technology that will deliver the thing to improve privacy in Bitcoin, to improve fungibility in Bitcoin. But the next stumbling block, the decentralization. So everything I'm doing is typically straight line trying to fix like technology limitations, privacy, fungibility, decentralization limitations that stand in the way of, the full realization of the Bitcoin's potential for society. So, yeah, and I think the other thing people sometimes get a bit elitist to say, that they're OGs or that they should know better because they're involved in Bitcoin earlier. But I don't really see it like that. There's so many very insightful, great communicators who have, joined even as recently as like last year or this year. And I think everybody's still learning about Bitcoin. It's a living thing. It's improving over time, and our understanding of it is improving. And it's a complex system. There's economics, and you have people are forming a kind of group opinion about a store of value, right? So it's partly a social thing as well, I guess, in a way.
That's interesting because, yeah, okay. I'm surprised to hear that you're, you pay attention to the philosophical side and what it's doing for society, and that was what was driving you. Because we talk about, sort of pivotal moments throughout history, the ancient Greeks, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, that a group of people seem to coalesce around an idea or a way of thinking, an ideology, and transform the rest of history. And it feels like, this is the Bitcoin era is a continuation of those sort of major shifts in consciousness.
Well, I mean, I had made the observation actually that, if you come at it from the outside or a default expectation, there are a number of well-known sort of mathematicians, cryptographers who designed key pieces of technology, like David Chaum with a blind signature, eCash, Ralph Merkle, Whitfield Diffie with public key cryptography, and things like this. And you would think, oh, it's just a mathematician. It's just doing his job or he's getting his tenure. But actually, if you talk to them and you read about what they're about, they invented that technology because they were concerned about privacy. And so I think behind it is, if they've got a mission, they've got a stronger focus to solve a problem. as opposed to meandering around, solving problems that could get published. They're targeting specific problems that achieve a particular effect, and they work harder for it because they care about it more, and they focus in a narrower area, so they're more likely to break through in something. So I think that's just a kind of whimsical observation, but it does seem much more than I would have expected on average to be the case.
Right. So there is an ideology, and it's tied to a movement called cypherpunk, and they gave us public encryption. Right. They stole it from the military folks, and they delivered it to the public, and they also are going down the path into Bitcoin. And I wanted to ask you about a word that came up during this Michael Saylor, Frank Juster debate. Frank Juster used the word anarchy a few times, and that we can never embrace anarchy. Now, of course, there's two types of anarchy. One form of anarchy would be arsons roaming the streets, burning down buildings. Another form of anarchy is simply a distribution of power away from the center. And in fact, Bitcoin is anarchistic in that sense. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I have a kind of crypto anarchist viewpoint, which is nothing to do with the kind of disorderly thing. It's just saying that the free market is more powerful and empowering than people assume it would be, and that really what you want to do is get on a track to reduce government until it barely exists. And that's I once in a while will chime in to say that the blueprint, the objective we're trying to get to is Snow Crash, because Neil Stephenson's book Snow Crash projects forward to a future where people have kind of forgotten what the government, that it hardly exists anymore, right? They bump into this fellow who introduces himself. They don't know who he is. He says he's the president of the United States, and they kind of shrug and ignore him and walk off. So it's like a sort of vestigial kind of religious order that's not really in vogue anymore and has very little influence or something. So there's just the idea that there's a quiet revolution where the state becomes less of an influence in the global world. Now, of course, at the moment it's trending in the opposite direction because there's enormous amounts of money printing, which throws through government hands basically. But in the normal times, it was trending in the lower government direction.
Well, continuing on with this enlightenment and the sort of the revolution that Bitcoin has set in, it has separated money from state and money. And whether or not that was intentional or accidental, it's happened. So it's beyond that. But in terms of free market as well, Max and I have always talked about in all of our programming going back, over a decade, is that, whether or not it was ill intent or not, governments intervene on the price signal about money, about gold prices. They destroyed bond vigilantes. So there's nobody allowed to speak the truth about what they're doing with money printing. Now, Bitcoin, in a way, seems to have exposed that. It's one of the only honest price signals available anywhere in the world. It's telling you about this money printing. It's telling you, speaking of the anarchy of arsonists, it's like the anarchy of arsonists happening up in the central bank level. If looking out into the future of where we are from today with Bitcoin, do you think there's any going back? Like, do you think we can restore the central banks could ever restore order or faith in their fiat regime?
Well, they're certainly helping hyper-Bitcoinization with the money printing. And I think that, you're seeing a lot of effects. So you used a key phrase there, which is separating money from state, which is obviously a play on word on the word of separating church from state. And I think if people thought that from the early days of the internet that it achieved remarkable things in transforming the shape of power structures and freedoms and information control in the world, that having a truly free market money that actually effectively separates the state from the control of money is going to be I think it's going to when it's all played out, it will have a very interesting long-term effect. And in terms of putting the genie back in the bottle, I think that is going to be very difficult because market forces are a very difficult thing to fight with. The world is international, and there are all kinds of institutions, even at this point, seeking out Bitcoin yield curves who are not even Bitcoin exposed, right? They're using kind of Bitcoin neutral ways to indirectly lend money to people who are long Bitcoin. They will buy physical Bitcoin and hold it as collateral and then collect a yield. So they're helping somebody else go long Bitcoin. And so, they don't even have to believe it to do that. And as they see that it's a useful financial instrument and they're holding it anyway, they learn more about it and get confidence in it. So it becomes part of the infrastructure. I think there's, a few people have commented that this kind of yield curve cycle is absorbing money. So it's a sort of machine that is, absorbing a lot of money for seeking a return on investment in a very low yield environment with probable high asset price inflation.
Right. As interest rates are trending towards zero and in some cases negative, what you're pointing out there is that Bitcoin as collateral is attracting capital and creating a yield curve and reinventing capitalism and markets as we know them, with the base layer being Bitcoin. Now, I wanted to kind of change gears for a second here and talk about Blockstream. This is the company that you are co-founder and CEO of. You've got something new. It's called the Bitcoin mining note, speaking about yield curves here, or a Bitcoin mining unit. It's not available to U.S. investors. But what is the product? Why is it needed?
So we've been doing mining for about 5 years now, and typically for larger ticket sizes, so institutions and wealthy people, and we get a lot of inbound interest for, to buy mining in smaller amounts. And so, we started mining actually through a concern about centralization and that having an impact on Bitcoin achieving its full potential and impacting layer 2 security and things like that. So obviously we're very interested in decentralization, and there are lots of things one can do to hand control of the hash rate back to the individual miner. Today it's more kind of policy controlled by the pool. The pools are picking the transactions. There are new protocols that you could run a full node, you have a few miners, you run a full node, and you connect that to the pool and you tell it what transactions. So you want to do that kind of stuff and make that available to end users. So we set about, doing the accounting and tax planning and international structure work to make that a reality. So, the full public market kind of things are more complicated and time consuming. So, we started with this non-US qualifying investor limit. It's the actual regulation limit is 125,000 euros for one unit, but this is 200,000 for one unit. The reason being that it makes a round hash number. So it's 2,000 per hash, and we didn't want to sell an odd number for maths reasons. So what it does, it's a different product. I think it's the first product in terms of being both a kind of liquid security token and a European security. So it has an ISIN. You could give that security interest to a broker. It's not a share, it's a financial instrument through a Luxembourg securitization vehicle. Behind that is a Cayman company that has a service contract with Blockstream to provide the hash rate. And it has a very, very thin management structure. The taxation is outside, so that Luxembourg securitization vehicles don't take any tax deductions from the customer. And it includes buying equipment, the cost of equipment and the power for the full 3 years. Many hosting contracts subtract the cost of electricity from the mining, and we think that's generally a bad idea because you at times in the mining cycle you will be in a commodity economic situation where the margins get thinner. And so our back-tested analysis from our own experience mining is that you're best to hold the coins for at least 3 years. And so we want the people that buy it to have an economically good outcome, so they make money, so they buy it again. And so we made the product do that. It holds the coins inside the note for 3 years and it pays it out at maturity. And I'd say that generally that's a good strategy. If you have a capital allocation, rather than spending all of it on miners and then being out of money and having to sell coins to pay the electricity bills, where you're basically pumping out a lot of coins at the bottom of the market, where you want to be holding onto those coins, you're better off to use half the money to buy miners and set the other half aside to pay the power bill. Like do it at half size, but keep all the coins, and that will work out better economically. So that's what we're doing, and it's initially peer-to-peer OTC tradable. Stock. We worked with Stocker, which is the European securitization regulatory expert. They do the KYC because it's security, and they're the the security transfer agent for it. So you can transfer it peer-to-peer if both parties are enrolled for a couple of cents, so very cheap in share transfer terms. And midterm we are working with exchanges and hope to get exchange listings. So initially, after the first tranche closes, then it becomes eligible for people to OTC trade it.
Does this mean that mining becomes more decentralized and less concentration in places like China?
Well, that's the idea, So I personally, when we were doing institutional mining, I got a board waiver to do some of it myself. So, because I was buying from the company, we had to get independent pricing and so on. And my thesis was, well, you've got an allocation of Bitcoin. Maybe you want to take some percentage of that and do some mining. Because if you look at the total Bitcoin market cap, it doesn't take very many percent of that market cap to buy and operate all of the mining equipment. So I figured that, well, if you're caring about decentralization, you should, because the value of your coins depends on good enough decentralization, then be part of the solution. I mean, it's Bitcoin, right? There's nobody to complain to. So if you have a concern, you have to act. So this is a way to act. And so, I mean, that's I encourage people to look at it that way, right? So we're going to help you do that. And of course, one aspect of what we're doing is we're hosting it for you, and it'd actually be better if you hosted it yourself. But it's somewhat industrial, and people's home power rates are typically a lot worse, and they're noisy and they make a lot of heat. So what we can do is, add to our pool these open hash protocols where you will be able to register your Blockstream mining nodes and connect your full node to your account and inject transactions, so have an influence on the transactions. So then you're part of the decentralized choice about which transactions get into blocks. And that's going to be a lot more decentralized than today, where there's only really space for there to be something like 20 pools, because you need sort of 5% plus to reduce the variance enough of your mining to be an attractive pool. So it's a bit of a centralizing factor. These new protocols solve that in a newer, cleverer way.
Right. So interestingly, the incentive for the Bitcoiner is toward greater decentralization and not toward oligopolization, as a way to secure their economics in the protocol, in the system. So it kind of flips on the head a lot of the assumptions of economists for going back really hundreds of years. Now, Blockstream is also partnered with Acker's new subsidiary, CT, I think it is, to accelerate renewable energy. Tell us about that.
Right. So, I mean, it's a pretty interesting new entrant. The founder and chairman of the company, Shell Rocker, is a kind of the Elon Musk of Sweden. He's quite well known in his country. He's a billionaire. He owns the majority of this company, and he pretty much fell down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. Did what everybody did, listened to all the podcasts, started making connections, and so got connected with us. And so we partner with them to do mining technology, basically. So if you can look up, it's a public market company, so they have to follow public market rules, but there's a lot of information out there about what the assets they have in the renewables. They control a huge proportion of Europeans, offshore wind and renewable energy infrastructure. So they're interested to use some of the infrastructure to mine Bitcoin. Another interesting thing is that it's a subsidiary, but it's basically, they've got an intent to do Bitcoin. So this is their vehicle for doing Bitcoin. And they funded their Bitcoin vehicle with all Bitcoin, 500 million kronas. And their balance sheet is in Bitcoin. So they're really going for the Bitcoin balance sheet approach.
I think this is really the most exciting thing for me personally when I observe the notion of Bitcoin basically capturing stranded energy. And that's a genius next step in global capitalism or free markets. But I want to ask you one more thing about, speaking of these revolutionary moments and movements and going back to the Renaissance and Enlightenment, is you always have the artist, right? What are your thoughts on this situation with NFTs and, how to monetize the digital art? And the Bitcoin space is just filled with amazing artists in the past year or two. And what do you feel about what's happening in that space?
It's a bit chaotic, I would say. So I think they've in the crypto space you tend to get excesses, and certainly saw that in the ICO era, and more recently in the governance token, which has kind of taken over from ICOs. I would typify. We're going to have varying views on these things, but now with there are quite interesting and good use cases for this kind of technology. So one example is Satoshi's Games, which makes a kind of real-time game called Light Night, and it has player versus player lightning scoring. So if you take a hit, you pay a Satoshi to the other guy, and all of the game artifacts, like things that you can collect and use in the game, are liquid assets, and you can withdraw them from the game and put them in a liquid wallet. And they have a modified block explorer that shows you the statistics, like the characteristics of the artifact, and it's got a link to the actual the transaction. You can load it in a wallet, and you can give it to somebody, you transfer it to somebody, you can swap it, you can sell it on a marketplace. And just last week they opened a new release, which is a marketplace for game NFTs, basically. And so that's one kind of interesting thing. So in a sense, what makes that actually scarce is that you can copy the digital files that represent the game artifacts, but it won't do you any good because the centralized game server is enforcing them, right? They've got their game economics, and there are only so many of these per hour of play or per year or something, right? So you won't be able to override it. So it has the actual enforceability. Now, for somebody, myself, I'm not a fan of digital rights management, copy controls and things like that. I'm much more interested in information wants to be free. Digital content is freely copyable. That's one of the things that surprises people about Bitcoin. Actually, you can have scarcity in the digital world because generally it's impossible, right? Because people just copy things ad infinitum. So then the NFT thing comes in, which is, well, you're going to sell a digital photo collection or art collection, and people will kind of scoff at it and say, well, I just screenshotted it, I have a copy of your thing, so how is that, how do you own it? And I think that's the wrong way to think about it. So I think the logically consistent way to think about it is you are a patron of the arts, you commissioned this artwork, or you donated to Coin Center or something like that, and you got back a plaque or a certificate to say thank you for your donation, or something like that, right? But in this, because it's digital, and if you put it in a crypto asset format, you can resell it. And there are some countries that have a concept of a tax back to the artist on a transfer of artwork. Maybe France, I'm not, it's not really my area of expertise, but the idea being that, a starving artist produces a work that becomes famous, and wealthy people trade it around, and the artist continues to starve. And so they put in place the idea that when it's sold, maybe at a much higher price, some portion of the sale price goes back to the artist on each transfer. So things like that become possible. But of course, they're not enforceable because the digital original, there is no original, they're all the same, right? So it's really just the bragging rights that you commissioned it or you bought it off somebody. And you see this in the art world in terms of provenance. You have art experts looking at it, auction house sales of receipts and things like that. So people are concerned about originality, but here the only originality is the chain of record of who commissioned it or who bought it and stuff like that. So now we've seen some quite kind of cute or nice things, like Hodlernaut. So he decided to, retire the Hodlernaut Space Cat account and pseudonym, and somebody made a kind of space helmet sitting on the ground, sort of like he's put the helmet down, he's gone. So that's a nice piece of artwork, right? So it has cultural meaning to an audience. So people will sometimes feel like they want to grab, say something to commemorate that or something. But I think it gets into excesses too, because people try to play off celebrity or put sticker shock. And I think, for example, the Beeple one, which kind of threw people like the most expensive piece of art in history or something, it's a little bit self-serving potentially. It transpires that the buyer was somebody who owned an NFT company and trying to start an NFT marketplace. So maybe he's going to resell it and consider that a business expense and so on. I don't know. That's the discussion anyway.
Right. On NFTs, you mentioned something there that struck home. And when you say that, quote, there is no original, I think that's absolutely correct. You have only copies and no original. Even when you're making prints of an art, there's still an original art, and then there's prints of the art. But here, because fidelity is absolute and perfect, you can say that there is no original. Now, you bring up an interesting point there. So it's really stuck between two places. Number one, as you point out, there are NFT-like objects within centralized platforms, notably gaming platforms. That's a centralized economy, and they have value within the economics of that game, but that's purely centralized. And that's part of that would be not necessarily what an NFT artist is seeking. And then the second part of the idea here is that, well, it could be outside of a centralized game and it would exist on its own, but then there's no difference between that and what you would run up against in terms of copyright and digital rights management. You're just reinventing the same problem you have right now with copyright, that artists create stuff, it gets ripped off, and they claim copyright. So there's no difference. If I do an NFT and I say, oh, I want revenue on this, well, you're going to have to claim copyright on it. And how's that any different?
Yeah, I mean, I think so I'm not a fan of DRM in general, but also in particular because it tends to run into sort of internet freedom, censorship, anonymity, and privacy, because the recording industry, the Motion Picture Association, that try to enforce those kind of things, collude with ISPs in some countries to censor content, block domain names, seize domains, and all this kind of stuff, which I think there's an inherent conflict. So DRM has to fail. But I think the logically consistent way to look at it is it's not, you're not dealing with copyright. You are making a voluntary payment or donation to the artist in exchange for a certificate recognizing that donation, and then you can choose to sell that to somebody else. And I guess the resellability is a form of gamification for the social kudos of having
but that price discovery that goes in the resale market, it's really difficult to come up with something based on scarcity.
Well, I mean, you can have, I mean, you see, for example, one of the quite well-known Bitcoin artists made some limited prints of some of his works, right? So you'd immediately recognize the artwork. There is one original, but there's, a run of 100 of them. And they're obviously a lot less expensive than the original, but they're clearly more than the reproduction cost. And they seem to sell, but they're in a physical format, right? And so I think you could make the argument, well, he's giving you a digital file and he's selling you a limited run, and that the limited, you don't sort of own the digital file, but you have a certificate on it, which maybe makes you feel good that you contributed to this talented artist doing more of it, or maybe you didn't, maybe you just copy it, right?
Right, but I think you used the right word earlier of patronage. It's, Medici financed a lot of art that we all appreciate to this day. Like Michelangelo, Da Vinci, all these guys were, patrons of some sort of wealthy banker or something like that. So they weren't doing it to resell the art or make a fortune in it, because the market wasn't like that back then, but it was for the public good. So you're saying basically it's just patronage like that. Well,
I mean, I think that's a logically defensible way to look at it. And if you start operating in a logically indefensible way, you're probably going to have a bad time in the fullness of time, because, if people are buying it thinking that it's, it's a unique and limited thing that can't be copied. I mean, if they're focused on the resale value, they're buying it not because they want to be a patron to the artist, but because they hope to sell it for more. That may not pan out. We'll have to see how it goes.
All right. Well, I think that's a good point to end this episode. This was really fun talking to you, and I think you've enlightened everybody in the audience with your dropping some knowledge there.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on.
We'll try to sell this episode as an NFT, see if it works.
Okay. Interesting experiment, right?
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
So our interview with Adam Back
Wait.
was, his delivery is like, he's very calm. He's like a good voice for podcasting, right? Like he's very calm, collected, unlike, say, Madame Lagarde, who's a little bit shrill. And
wait. He's the guy in the Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie who's putting the bomb in the building.
Okay. Yeah.
He's like, do you have it yet? Is it set? And they're like, yeah, putting tab A into slot B, and we'll get this thing connected in a jiffy. Just hold your damn horses.
Well, he kind of did play that role in detonating the global fiat system. Like,
that's what I'm saying. He's a pyrotechnics.
Yeah.
Pyrotechnics.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense that Christine Lagarde, who, is French and Chicago school, so she's, neoliberal and overseeing.
J'ai un problème avec Max Kaiser. Est-ce que vous connaissez Max Kaiser?
IMF debt pusher, now ECB money printer. So she's overseeing the whole detonation of the fiat system. And here we have Adam Back, one of the, that 15, 20 years of cypherpunks before, which Satoshi built upon their inventions to deliver to the people the guillotine that would take down Madame Lagarde's fiat dark ages.
Oui. C'est Max Kaiser. Mais il a dit que moi, Christine Lagarde, a un visage serpent. En anglais, snake face. C'est Max Kaiser, c'est Christine. C'est un snake face, visage serpent. C'est très moche.
Okay. That's enough French for today.
Okay.
We'll speak English for those who do not speak French.
Okay, fine. I mean, I can't speak French either. That's clear. Look at the comments from any other French people. They'll say, what the fuck?
Everybody loved when I say everybody, I mean one person, Paco. He liked my pronunciation, my Italian pronunciation of the Spanish phrase, optimismo implacable. Relentless optimism. That
was really nice.
I want to sell that as an NFT as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Optimismo implacable. Optimismo implacable. Blah, blah, blah. Right. Yeah, I think that's good.
You got the right trousers for an Italian woman. It's like Prada, leopard trousers, the HODL t-shirt. You could be a model.
Okay. Well, anyway, that was a nice long interview. I hope you got a lot out of it. The most I got out of it was like we got beyond the technical, beyond the code, as all the cypherpunk coders, geek stuff. We got beyond that of just the technical stuff, which can be a little bit.
I like to dip in and out. Code, philosophy, code. It's a degustation.
Yeah.
For us gourmands, who like to eat the entire menu. Why just stick to one thing on the menu when you can eat the entire menu? You know what I'm saying?
Where do you think? Do you think Adam Back would see that, the similarities between him and Marilyn Monroe? It's better to be late than to arrive ugly.
Definitely. I think he sees himself as the Marilyn Monroe over there at CoinStreak. What's the name of that company? Blockstream.
He's the Marilyn Monroe of Blockstream.
Yeah, he's the Marilyn Monroe of Blockstream. That's how he's known in the Bitcoin community. Next time you see him, you say, "Yeah, man, that's so right on."
Right.
And Jack Lemmon is played by Samson Mao, and they're doing a reshoot of Some Like It Hot. It's going to be a new Blockstream version with Adam Back doing Marilyn Monroe. Samson Mao is playing the Jack Lemmon character. And who else was in that film? Walter Matthau? No, I can't remember.
Yeah, right. So that's from Another Century Boomer. So we're gonna move on to the next thing. No, actually, that's the wrap up of the show. Is OG is a state of mind. I think that was an important point to be made, and now I've made it about the fourth or fifth time.
OG is a state of mind,
and this is a state of mind as well. One day you too could.
This is where it all goes. People are like, this is where Michael Saylor will be in 5 years. Right? Michael Saylor is new. He's a newbie. And, after 5 years, this is where he'll be, and he'll love it. Where I'll be at that point, who knows? But it's where everyone eventually ends up here.
Basically, you'll end up where Jack Nicholson did in
The Shining?
One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yeah, it
Right.
meets The Shining, like either one.
Right.
Either like I'll have
Nice
to drill a
see you
hole in
again,
your head.
Lloyd. Sure, why not, Lloyd? Great to see you again.
So
We're brought to you by Swan Bitcoin.
I was just going to say, we are brought to you by swanbitcoin.com/orange pill. And of course, you can monetize Sunshine as well at our other sponsor, thesunexchange.com/orange pill. And we're going to be doing a virtual cocktail party soon with Nick Newman of Casa, keys.casa. That everybody loved that interview last week. We should do one with Adam Back as well. I wonder how he would do at a cocktail party with a bunch of freaks on Orange Pill
Just
Podcast.
ply him with vodka. It'll do great.
And I suppose we could also run that ad because it's kind of soothing to take you down from this Madame Lagarde shrill thing. Like play that ad from the Sun Exchange.
Oh, from Dignitas, the euthanasia clinic?
It's like really calm and it makes you feel
to the
so
Sun
good.
Exchange. Everything is calm here.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Here
We're
you
just turning
go.
sunshine into Satoshis right in your own freaking wallet. You're going to love it.
Yeah, here it is.
Sun Exchange is the world's first peer-to-peer solar leasing platform. Earn Bitcoin solar power in communities in Africa and be part of the new world economy. Visit thesunexchange.com/orange pill and start monetizing Sunshine today.
Okay, do you feel better? Have you taken your Soma?
Yeah, I did with my orange pill. I mix sometimes orange pill and my Soma with a little cocktail. It's like a speedball for acid freaks who might not be aware that you can do the same thing by just mixing iced coffee and avocado dip.
Well, I assume we are now about to also enter the listening room over at Bitcoin Cafe run by Bitcoin Chris.
Oh, yeah. Where is he now? Cancun? That guy's never going to work another day in his life, is he?
Well, not if Joe Biden raises tax
He's
rates
never
to
coming
like
back.
52%.
Bitcoin Chris is like he's sailing away.
Now, for those,
Bitcoin Chris is nowhere to be found.
by the way, for those who are listening in the listening room, you have to understand maybe Bitcoin Chris needs to share a photo with everybody so they understand exactly what Max looks like. He has a scary white wig on with a gray hoodie over it, and some pretty cool, like Tom Cruise looking sunglasses on, from the 1980s sort of sunglasses. So he's looking kind of, what was that quote from Marilyn Monroe? Remember when Marilyn Monroe said, "It's better to be late than to arrive
What
ugly"?
we got here is a failure to communicate.
Failure to communicate.
Okay, that's these glasses made famous in that movie with Paul Newman.
Yeah. So
Eat all those soft-boiled eggs.
yeah.
Cool hand Luke.
Cool hand Luke. Right. So just so you understand, that's what Max looks like as he's
I look like
delivering
Paul
this episode.
Newman and Christine Lagarde with a little Dominic Strauss-Kahn mixed in.
Yeah. We wonder how that happened. So we'll be joining you soon over in the listening room. And remember to go stack your sats at swanbitcoin.com/orange pill and to
Why are you showing
monetize
me
your
the
sunshine
hand?
because you're always talking over me.
But they can still hear.
No, but I want to hear myself. They might be able to hear you and me, but I can't hear myself. So what I'm saying is I need to hear myself because I forget the word sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, like I'm close to boomer sort of age. So I got to say, like, you got to shut up. You got to let me speak. And it's thesunexchange.com/orange pill. And now it's time to go to our listening room.
Okay, that was really well done. Great. Look at that. Look at you. Got that whole sentence out. All right. Woohoo!